Alrighty here. I think I'm live. All right. So today I'm going to discuss the first official video of my new series, the paths of control within religious philosophies. And I think that it's very important to understand where another is coming from so that you have that grounds of defense, but also in I guess you could say, memoir of protection magic that you can put in play to protect yourself from them. Basically, right down to utilizing their own scripture, their own knowledge against them. Now, the first thing you have to understand is the various different paths that are out there. Now, we know the major ones: Hebrewism, Judaism, Islamic traditions, Christian and Catholic. Okay, but there's also Amish traditions, which are similar to that of the Baptists. And the various different Christian denominations, all the way down to apostolics and Pentecostals. Okay, but even though these ones are very, how do you say, public and well known, there are others that are equally as well known out there that are more of lesser standard in comparison, namely because of the propaganda that the church puts out. Okay, one of which is the African tradition. Now, a lot of you know this as voodooism. Okay, voodooism. You have black magic. You have different denominations of this, and I've talked about this in other videos. This is actually comes down to the laws of the land, because in one tribe, a king of a tribe would not do anything without first discussing it with a priest or priestess. Okay, within the arts. Okay, namely, a lot of these shamans, these black magicians, these magical practitioners always were either held in high review, or they lived just on the outskirts of the town, but they were highly respected. Okay, and we can see this in many different traditions. But what's unique about the African tradition is the fact that even though today there's a lot of conflict over in Africa, from Christian to Islamic to voodooism, depending if you're in Malawi or Ethiopia, perhaps South Africa, such as Johannesburg, or wherever, you're going to see a lot of conflicting reports on religious standings. And we're going to get into these as well as these videos progress. And I know I stated yesterday that I was only going to do 3, but depending on the amount of knowledge that I end up putting out, will probably be more than that. But it all comes down to how fast I can get this out, and better yet, how many questions are asked. But I believe that it will be no more than 3. So within the African traditions, it comes down to the laws of the land, because, as I said, one priest or one village would worship both white and black magic. They would be considered the balance factor, but also welcoming within the community, because they were both beneficial. However, in a different village, so let's say, for an example, going from the Congo into Malawi, white magic, such as the white lighters of voodooism, that deal with angelic beings, and the Loa, would classify it as, how do you say, or how should I say it? I should say, as how is more of the more preferred practice, whereas dark sorcery, like from the Boko or the Bokor, depending on the tradition, would be, how do you say, unacceptable, even downright criminal. I mean, over in Malawi, for an example, there is a task force set up for occult crimes. Not joking. You can look this stuff up on YouTube, Google, you name it. It's right there. Whereas, say, for an example, in Ethiopia, black magic is going strong. Now, these traditions normally are referred to as deriving from the Yoruba people. Okay, and the Yoruba people are basically responsible for the first religious sect, okay, of philosophical and religious belief systems in the spiritual nature. And this actually gave birth to what we know today as Hoodooism, Voodooism, Quimbanda, Umbanda, Santa Morte, and many other traditions such as Palo Mayombe and Santeria. Okay, practices. I mean, a lot of these are just branches, if not denominations, deriving and growing from this one particular art and practice. Okay. Now, what's interesting to note is there really is no founder within any of these traditions. No one really knows who founded them. No one really knows who came up with them. They just appeared and started being practiced. It's like, think of it from a Christian viewpoint. Starts off with Catholicism. The priests, the Protestant. Okay, structure goes into Baptists, Apostolics, Pentecostals, Jehovah Witnesses, and such. It's kind of like a tree of life, if you wish. It kind of just denotes branches. It literally creates branches, and you end up having splinter cells. And this can actually be seen very, very well within many of the Judeo-Christian societies and their practices, as well as in voodooism itself. We know that due to the slave trade, a lot of these traditions that sprung up were created throughout the southern hemisphere, from the French quarters to the English channels, all the way down into Jamaica, um, Haiti, all the way over into South America and Central America, all the way up into what is now known as Creole lands. Um, this used to be the French portion of America. Okay, and a lot of this can be seen right down in New Orleans, Louisiana, and a lot of these practitioners are right there. Now, I've personally heard conflicting reports in Facebook groups and other things, other regions such as chat groups and Facebook groups, all the way, even right here on YouTube itself, that describe being careful of who you trust within these traditions, because not all of them are for your benefit. Okay. And this is, if you think about it, this is actually much of the same propaganda and fear tactics that the church pulls. For an example, on one hand, he's the only way. And on the other hand, you can't do it by yourself. This kind of just puts you in that deadlock of, okay, if I can't do it on myself and he's the only way, what do I do? How do I do it? And that puts you into slavehood. Okay, this brings you right back into slavery, and it's basically their way or the highway, because once they have that level of control on you, then it goes into other factors of you being brainwashed and trained in the way they think, their specific denomination. And then you end up with egoism. You end up with superiority complexes. And then you have stupidity, because no one can tell you what's in the Bible. They can tell you what they've been told is in the Bible, but they don't really know where it is in the Bible. Now, back when I first got into Christianity and started learning how to become a minister through an apostolic minister, okay, Well, technically, the guy was a evangelist at the time, and when I first got into it and started learning from him how to be a minister and how to go about being not only a priest, but also within the arts and practices, but also within the different aspects of ministry, such as counselors, counseling people, being there for your public, your community, and what that represents. Okay. But I spent 6 months with a Jehovah Witness, just talking shop with the guy, just talking from various different religious beliefs. Started talking to him about biblical stuff as well, and how different texts from the Zohar to the Jewish Haggadah to the Mishra, all the way back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, discuss all this stuff and how it can be seen today in the different denominational Bibles, such as the Roman Missal, to the American Bible, to the MIV Bible, to the King James Bible, the New King James Bible, and all the other types of Bibles out there, from the Quran to the Jewish Bible and such, and how it actually moved through. Almost like taking a tree that grows extra branches as a new denomination and a new viewpoint pops up. Okay. And this guy kept quoting from the Bible. So one day I looked at him and I took this apostolic viewpoint and I said, where's that in the Bible? Where does it say that in the Bible? The guy this guy, his name was Jay Sullivan. Okay. He's a Jehovah's Witness. And he and his wife are now doing this stuff with, from what I understand, with the deaf and blind. Where they're teaching people sign language and all this stuff, going from Kingdom Hall to Kingdom Hall. So I asked the guy, I said, where's this in the Bible? Well, he scrolled through the Bible and he says, well, it's in there. And it's like, really? Well, what if I told you that it's this book, this chapter, and this verse? Well, after I started showing him up, he basically quit and severed all ties. He ran like a little bitch. Okay. And that's basically what it is, because when you start questioning those in authority, you become known as Satan. You become known as the adversary, the opposer. And therefore, you become the enemy. And therefore, you become a child of disobedience, which goes right back to the sons of darkness and the sons and daughters of darkness out of the scroll of Amram. And this is actually part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay. So you see, this is where this goes. And then in voodooism, you have a complex series of the Loa, spelled with the L-O-A or the L-W-E, depending, or the L-W-A, depending on the denomination of it, the spelling and the region. Okay. And the Loa are very, very similar to the Ugan. The Ugan are or I guess you could say the demigods, if you wish, of Santeria and Palo Mayombe. So you see right there, you got the demigods, much in the same way as the Holy Spirit is the intermediary between Jesus of Nazareth and what they call the Father. Okay, so again, you're seeing the same structure being branched off into other now known as occult structures. Okay. Even in Santeria, the structure of Mary, which is also worshipped by the Catholic Church, the mother of Christ or the mother of Jesus, is also the one known as Saint Death, the most holy death. Okay. And she's robed depending on the need, be it warfare, death, love, sickness, protection, whatever, is denoted by the robes that she wears. Most of the time, as Saint Death, she's shown as the bony lady. Skeletal structure of a person or a woman's skeletal structure in black robes. Okay, but there are also other denominations of her in red robes, and you got to remember that there's actually two structures of Santa Morte. There is La Santa Muerte, which is out of Spain and Portugal. Okay. And then you have Santa Muerte, which is mostly practiced throughout the southwestern, down into Central America. And this structure here, Santa Muerte, is actually similar to the Catholic Church. So this is basically an offshoot. So instead of worshiping Jesus Christ, they end up worshiping Saint Death, the bony lady, the lady that can be the intermediary, much in the same way as Papa Legba, and can go between the celestial and the shadow realms, or the spirit realms, whatever realm that you wish to go in. That individual is the only one that can open those doors and go between them. Okay. So again, you're seeing that aspect. And you're seeing where it's an almighty deity that can go between all of them. Much in the same way as Jesus Christ descending into hell before going into heaven. Okay, getting the keys to unlock the door. Papa Legba in voodooism or voodoo is the gatekeeper. Then he's the one that can unlock all gates. In demonolatry, you have the nine infernal gatekeepers. E.A. Coetting speaks a lot on these beings. Okay, so again, you're seeing these all deriving all the way into Catholicism, but also into voodooism and into the African traditions, all the way up into the Middle East. Okay, then you have the Asian branches of mystical, which deal a lot with Buddhism, but at the same time, the higher monkhood of, you have monks, you have um, those who believe in Buddha. And what's interesting to note is there, instead of having one hell, such as in hell, out of the goddess of the underworld, or goddess of the dead in Norse mythology. Okay, but you also have the one hell by the Christian point of view. But what's interesting about the Asian Buddhism is that they believe in multiple hells. Okay. Now, those of you who are familiar with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the one with Allison Hannigan and Sarah Michelle Gellar, Anthony Stewart Head, okay, as the Watcher, okay, the Witch, and the Slayer. Okay. Now, what's interesting to note is that in season 2, it speaks of many different hells. That each hell has its own founder. Okay, and this is also seen and dragged into season 3 when Sarah Michelle Gellar's character comes back to Sunnydale, or decides to come home to Sunnydale. Okay, not just when she fought her long lost boyfriend, Angel, but when he became Angelus and such, and the terror vampire, but also describes the various different hells, okay, and how the time difference is different in each one. And what's interesting here is even in Supernatural, the show Supernatural, starring Jensen Ackles, is at the end of, was it season 3, I think, when he is killed by the Hellhound and gets taken to hell, and he comes back in the beginning of the next season. He spoke of time being different. In this realm, it was seen as 3 months, but down there, it was decades, it was years. Okay, so again, you're seeing that time difference. So much in the same way as the Asian Buddhism believing in different hells, you're seeing the different belief structures between regular Buddha and Christianity and all these others. So again, you're seeing the same duality of good versus evil. And each one has superior deities versus lesser. Okay. And the same point of view as the priests and priestesses versus the Boko or the Bokor. Okay. So you got good practitioners and evil practitioners. Those, much in the same way as witchcraft today being seen by practicing witches, and whereas warlocks are seen as oath breakers and betrayers. It is the same old duality that goes back to the scroll of Amram. Okay. And what's interesting to note is that even if you get into the Australian practices, the Celtic, um, Central and South American, Egyptian, these these type of dualities, and again, the tradition of Egyptian mythology, you're going to get different deities who believe in different things. For an example, Set is considered to be the god of hell. He is the god of the underworld, much in the same way as Hades in Greek mythology, versus Zeus or Ra. Okay, Loki versus Thor, or Hel versus Odin. Okay, same structure, just a different style of practice. So they're gonna snare you in these. So you have to be ready for this and know what you're talking about. But yeah, what's interesting to note is that there's always a mother in this. Hathor. Okay. Hathor in Egyptian. Lilith in demonology or angelology. You have Hera, the mother of the gods. Okay. But even though you have these and you go back into history, you're going to see that there's a deity that came before them. Okay. And then you have the Finnish, you have the Hawaiian. The Hawaiian is very, very unique practices where they deal mostly with the spiritual dances of the seasons. And much of paganism in Wicca actually is derived from this. And a lot of people don't realize that. Italian witchcraft, the strega, for an example, very powerful witches, especially if you come from a hereditary line. These are generations of witches being trained. And their way is of charging, much in the same way as the Jewish charge for their services. You look at the church, they're always putting a price on things. We need a certain amount of dollars for this. What was it? The apostolics have 10 grand sitting in their bank account, but yet they're asking for $22,000. $22,000 to fix up their sanctuary. That's $2,200. That's 2 grand, $200. 2,200. Bam. Could have taken it right out of the bank account, but no, they took it from their patrons. Because in the Bible it says 10%. 10% of your income goes to the church. Why? Okay. Ask yourself that. Then you have the Mediterranean, the North Native Americans' beliefs. Now, what's interesting to note about the North American natives, Native Americans, or the Native Indians, is that they practice and deal with the spirits. And each spirit is much in the same way as, say, for an example, the Roman belief structure, or that of, say, for an example, let's say, for example, Apollo, the sun god, Inti, the sun god, Supe, the sun god, um, Ra, the sun god. Okay. Um, each one, they believe in the spirit of the sun. Okay. You have the spirit of the moon. You have the spirit of the dawn, the spirit of the earth, the spirit of a tree, the spirit of an animal. Okay. Much of this is derived from shamanism. Okay. Which is very, very interesting because they believe in the spirit of something. And what's interesting to note about that alone is the uniqueness within it. Siberian witchcraft is similar to that of the strega, okay, or Italian witchcraft, is because they deal a lot with herbalism. They deal a lot with the structure of herbal magics, healing potions. much in the same way as the modern voodoo priests and priestesses, the community of that in Malawi and over in Ethiopia and the Congo regions, where they believe solely on herbalism and healing. The white light practices much in the same way as the Judo Christian Society. And they really do frown on the practitioners that sell their services, but don't realize that they too are selling their services. Every time they pimp themselves out for money. Okay. And yes, I just went there. Pimp themselves out for money. Okay. So you're seeing that yet again. They're selling their product, they're selling themselves. Okay. They're selling their services. When, for an example, one of the criminal ways of the Catholic Church or the Judo Christian Society is they believe wholeheartedly in the Bible and the teachings of their God, Jesus Christ. And what's interesting to know here is when Jesus Christ says, "Do not turn away little children," how many of these priests within the last, say, for an example, 5 years, be it bishops, be it pastors, be it Catholic ministers, okay, have been arrested or charged with child pornography? And yet people solely look at all other practitioners practices as being evil, and yet the church is solely correct. Okay. Again, this comes down to brainwashing. It comes down to advertising. It goes down to the way you present yourself in your foundation, your order. Okay. Your temple and such. Okay. Even Slavic or Siberian, path workings. And it's literally very interesting to note that a lot of these ones that I just named off are just some of the traditions that have survived the eons of warfare and the duality that has sprung up around them. And you can actually go into a lot of different details from the Zohar, Jewish demonology, the Mishra, the Talmud. You can go into the Dead Sea Scrolls, and go and trace the roots all the way through history into Zoroastrianism, into the Christian era, into paganism, into Wicca, into modern day, structures of belief systems. For an example, a lot of people have now put on rights and claiming to own knowledge. Okay, such as the Church of Satan. Okay, and a lot of this is derived by them. And what's interesting is now you got people accusing others of plagiarism. You got people accusing others of being wrong. And when faced with, how should I say this, overwhelming evidence, they still cannot bring themselves to admit that they are wrong. Okay, and this is something that's very funny because of the fact that I've actually been kicked out of groups because of presenting knowledge and presenting references, and yet people argue with you that you are wrong within them. And it's like, well, you're claiming that I'm wrong. Well, where is your references? Where's your proof to what you are saying? Okay, I'm presenting actual references and documents that you can go out and look for yourself out of these books, these references. Okay, and they still can't bring themselves to even follow their own rules. It's downright funny how they set the rules, but they themselves don't follow it. Okay. Now, a lot when you get ministers that are driving $75,000 vehicles or $155,000 vehicles, I know a bishop that's now out in Ohio, and he owns a $155,000 Cadillac. A bishop right one city over from me owns a $75,000 King Ranch full time. Okay, I'm talking fully tricked out, fully I'm talking leather seats. I'm talking um, CD players. I'm talking the whole king caboodle. Automated windows, you name it. And it's a $75,000 vehicle. Okay, there are ministers out there that own entire football fields. The Vatican itself has its own city, its own personal police force. Okay, and yet they're constantly asking for more money. And this all comes down to doctrine. It all comes down to the philosophical practice of each religious style, form, tradition, sect. Okay. And what's interesting to note here is that if you if you go to, say, for an example, the temple of the feminine divine, no male has any authority in that order. Okay. In paganism, men bow to the priestess. In Satanism, it comes down to volunteering to be an altar. Okay. If a male is being the altar, the living flesh, then a female priestess takes over and does the entire rituals. Okay. If it's a male being the priest, then a female is being the altar. Okay. But what's interesting to note is the type of name that you go by. If you go in, for an example, one of the biggest conflicts of duality out there is the title of warlock versus witch. Okay. In old days, a warlock and a witch were considered to be the same, one and the same. They were both respected. They were highly sought after for their wisdom, their knowledge. But when Christianity took over, one of the methods that they utilized was introducing their doctrines. And then they started putting down limitations. And then they just took over. From the Dark Ages, when Christianity first arose, the late Dark Ages, into the Holy Wars, into the Burning Times, you see the same structure no matter where in the world you go. They've got to have a church on every single street corner because it's their belief structure. It is better to go by priest or priestess rather than witch or warlock because of the fact that over the last 1,000 years, a warlock was seen as an oath breaker, a betrayer, and yet countless individuals from Christopher Penziak to Christian Day to Hans Holzer have all done research and studied the word warlock from various different traditions, from different regions of the world that have different definitions of it. And what's interesting to know here is that the term warlock was a male practitioner, a male practitioner equal to that of a witch. Okay. But yet, because of the corruption of everything, documents lost, things that were destroyed, things that were corrupted, a warlock became known as an oath breaker and a betrayer, and a phrase that was utilized to label somebody that had betrayed their covenant or their particular order that they live in. For an example, the Order of the Black Robe, which dates back to the 2nd century. You've all heard this book of the world's largest book known as the Codex Gigas. A monk violated his oath to the order and was going to be executed, but he made a plea bargain to spare his life, that he would write the world's largest book to ever, to ever be written. And it became known as the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. Okay. And what's interesting here is that today it is still the world's largest book. But if you go into the copyright regulations, you'll see why it's the largest book ever to be produced. Because 11 by 17 is the largest that is legally able to be produced today. Fascinating, isn't it? Okay. So again, you're being entrapped, okay, by religious orders, by religious sects without having any firm information about why these things were placed. Because a lot of people will not question, they will simply accept established documents. It is easier than to actually commit change, to actually learn and pick up a book. They're afraid of being persecuted. They're afraid of being labeled. They're afraid of becoming an outcast because everybody wants to be a part of something. And of course, nobody questions a man of God. Nobody. Okay. Which is why laws have been set up. If you look at the United States laws, both local, state, and federal today, there is exactly 666 laws nationwide. Interesting, isn't there? Isn't it? Why else would no other laws have been created in the last 50 years? Okay. But over the last 25 years, you're also seeing a new form of duality that has sprung up. For an example, Jeremy Adam Capps. This is actually the guy I actually learned from on Christian values, about utilizing Christian documents from. Okay. And his works actually helped me understand the Bible a lot better than any denomination in the Judeo Christian society. And his work is known as the Christian Satanic Bible. Okay. That's right. The Christian Satanic Bible. But then you, on the other hand, within Wicca and paganism, you've also got the Christian and Wiccan Bible. You've got Christian and Wiccan or Christian and pagan witches. So again, you're seeing that duality. Things are being corrupted, new things springing up, and yet nobody questions. Nobody questions this duality. So right there, you've now got a firm foundation of various different belief structures from surviving foundations. For an example, some of the references that I would recommend to you would be the Talmud, the Mishra, Jewish demonology, the Jewish Haggadah, okay, the Dead Sea Scrolls, specifically the Scroll of Amram, okay. You can go into the Bible, get into the various types of Bibles, okay. And what's interesting to note also before I go on is earlier today I saw a satanic sister of mine, one of my apprentices and friends. She posted on what do you do when you're struck on the left? Turn right also. Basically, the Christian viewpoint of that. So I posted the 9 satanic statements. When struck on the left, smash them in the right. Because in reality, as beasts of the field, how many people would just sit there and let somebody pummel them? In reality, would you not protect yourself? You see, by not doing it, that goes against human nature. That goes against the animal laws of the kingdom of animalistic tendencies. This is why there's so much illness in the world today. It's why there's so much stupidity, is because even though they claim that America is one of the most intellectual based countries, America really is not that intellectual because nobody really has a clue about anything because people are too busy trying to belong. They're trying so hard to be morally and politically correct, putting labels on things and creating adversities and diversities, which is traced right back to the Judo Christian societies. And yet, nobody questions them. So, this video here basically has put forth not only the surviving traditions of magical philosophies, but has shown you the control factor and how they control you throughout the diversities, the dualistic natures of each of the modern day societies, and how they are resembling the Judo Christian. Okay, and if you look at most of today's traditions, though, they're getting rid of the male aspects and going into the feminine. And this is shown through most of the gods and goddesses out there. There are more goddesses than there are gods, especially today. When you look at the Loa, most of the Loa are female. When you look at, you're looking at probably 43%, if not 45% male, whereas 55% female. Okay. More and more traditions are taking on the female or the feminine archetype of the traditions, of the goddesses. And this could be shared right back to the Roman Catholic Church. Mary. When you go to a Catholic monastery, you go to a Catholic church, you even go to the Vatican, they're not praising Jesus Christ. They're not praising that of the male deific. No. It's Mary, mother of Jesus. Whoops. Didn't see that coming, did you? And yet, very few traditions out there are sticking with both the male and the female. And these are becoming more and more lesser in number. So, before you accept any established religious sect or document, really do your homework on them. Find out where they go. For an example, E.A. Quetting, for an example, and I'm not hating on the guy because I respect this guy. I really do. Is he speaks on Baal or Balaal or Baal, depending on the nature of the spelling, because Baal was spelled with Baal or Bael. Okay. Now, there's actually a goddess that came before this particular god. Okay, he's known as Lord, the Lord. Okay, Baal is known as the Lord. Okay, and he's one of the nine infernal kings that E.A. Quetting and many other in demonolatry, black magician, Satanism, they all work with it. And trust me, I even work with Baal. Okay, but those of us who have been around, like E.A. Quetting, myself, and S. Connolly, Michael W. Ford, and a few others who have basically been established within the communities will tell you that Baal may be considered the Lord or a god. Okay. But not many people know that Dagon, one of the four sub princes, third of the four sub princes of hell, known as the ancient serpent, now known as, who's had many names, from Corazon, Shirazon, Leviathan, even Tiamat, okay, can be traced all the way back to Dagon, who was the one responsible for giving birth to Baal. And what's interesting to note here is that when you align this throughout not only mythology, but also historical accounts. Dagon predates Canaanite times and goes right back into the time of the Chaldeans. And the Chaldeans were highly advanced for their age and for the time because they could travel through nocturnal times. They learned how to map, to create maps. They learned how to utilize astrology, specifically the solar stars. The solar star, the north and southern star. Okay, the zodiacs and everything in between. They had currency. They built Stonehenge in England. They built the Stonehenge here in America in Salem, New Hampshire. Okay, and what's interesting is they also utilized the ley lines. How many cultures throughout history have done something like that? Okay. How many of cultures worldwide or religious foundations throughout history has been associated with Druidism? Who has been associated with numerology, astrology, the sciences, you know, the forbidden arts, okay, all in one. But most importantly, they dealt much in the same way as the Incans, the Mayans, and most of all the Aztecs with human sacrifice and animal sacrifices. Okay. And you can actually see this by utilizing the altars of these commandments, these two altars of just the Egyptians, the towers, the pyramids, and the Mayan ruins to the Aztecs cities, all the way down into the ancient Incans. They all believed in offering blood sorcery to the gods, be it Inti or Supe and Inca, be it Zeus or Hades in Greek, Ra and Set in Egyptian, Hel and Odin, or Thor and Loki in Norse mythology, and so on. I can go into all these and just lay it right out for you. But I'm not going to do that because I want you to take these references that I've given and I want you to go out and get them. I want you to study them for yourself, not because I told you to, but because you want to. I would love to see you learn. I would love to see you learn and grow and mature within the arts. Learn to apply what these deities are showing you in your life, in your practices, and to grow and to mature. To be able to learn from other styles and traditions and to look at the guidelines, okay, and see the similarities, but also the differences. Where did they come from? And do your own homework and go back in time. That's what some of these authors that I've named off have done. Okay. Michael W. Ford has taken things all the way back to Arabic times. E.A. Coeting, same exact thing. S. Ben Cayenne took it all the way back into Islamic and Jewish time belief systems, such as the Sumerian and Babylonian versions of Jinn, Genie, and Djinn. Okay, dealing with the old gods into angelology and demonology, going seeing how everything evolved. And getting into the myths, the legends, and historical accounts, such as Remy's demonology, an ancient account of ancient and traditions of witchcraft, to the discovery of witchcraft by Reginald Scott. Instead of just sitting there and accepted things at face value. So many people do this already. Why not be unique and do it for yourself? It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to pick up a book. It's okay to do research. You don't have to sit there and believe everything from a specific coven or a specific order or religious foundation. Look at it from as a way for you, self evolution. This is why in Satanism it's called self preservation. Okay. The highest law of a Satanist is self preservation. The second highest law is self gratification. This is because anything that brings the individual gratification is all good as long as it does not violate the number one law. Okay. So really delve into this. So I'm going to leave this video here for you to contemplate on and learn, and I'll be back in a few days to reveal more and to go into the actual practices. And I'll even use the scriptures and the methods a little bit to show you how to they actually do this and how about they go into it. Okay. But for now, utilize the sources that I've given in this video and go into these different regions of paganism and Wiccan practices. Get into these other forms of style such as voodooism, Santeria, Palo Mayombe, hoodooism, voodoo, um, Quimbanda, Umbanda. Get into Druidism, witchcraft, Strega or Italian witchcraft versus that of Siberian witchcraft. Okay, and you'll notice that just between the Italian witchcraft versus the Siberian, the uniqueness between them, but also the similarities of how they go about their practices. One's like a frozen Iceland, whereas the other one's this tropical paradise, or what would be classified as a tropical paradise. Okay, to each one of them, to the opposite, and really get into the practices, the myths, the legends, and go back in time, learn. This is why myself personally, I don't go by modern traditions. Okay, I deal with things from a medieval point of view. Okay, I go way back in my practices because there you see the truth. You see where it's unbiased. You see where it's you're getting to the truth of where things started and where they came from, where they derive from, and you'll as you go down through history, it's like putting a puzzle together, showing you each step and where everything, all these events unfolded. All right. It doesn't matter the tradition. It doesn't matter the lay of the land. It doesn't matter, you know, who's right and who's wrong. Get rid of the ego. Get rid of that sense of morality of I'm right, you're wrong. Get out of the slumps. Get out of adversities. Get out of divisions and become the sorcerer and sorceress you're meant to be. Learn, grow, and mature within the arts. Share your knowledge of what you're practicing, your expertise. And this is what I'm going to be doing around the third video is getting into these things. Now, I've given you quite a few references in this video, and it's really going to be awesome to see how many of you actually take the time to go and delve into them. And a lot of the time, especially on social media, like say Facebook, for an example, you can really get into the sense of who is actually studying, who is actually learning, because they're putting it forth. They're showing the references that they're reading. They're getting into the various different sources and practices, experimenting with the practices and applying it to their practices every day. Whereas those few just sit there and go, like, say, for example, most of which are like, Hail Satan, or posting satanic photos of naked women with a cross or whatever. When in reality, they're nothing more than a herd conformity. They're just going along with society just because they want to belong to something. Very few people have the balls, the very cojones to actually go against the tide. and to learn. All right. So with that said, that's been the first video on paths of control and religious philosophies. Okay. I hope I didn't overpower you with so much knowledge. Okay. But I hope that it's been enlightening. I hope it's been educational. And like I said, I hope you go out and do the work. Feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'm on Facebook and I'm on YouTube. Okay. Hit me up if you have questions. All right. Until then, like I said, this is the end of video 1. So until next time, this Dark Sorcerer is out. Enjoy your day, your night, wherever you are in the world.